I'm Sarah, 25 years old, married to my wonderful husband Marcus, and a proud new mother to our 2-month-old daughter, Ella. Life had been good, busy, chaotic, but full of love. Marcus and I had our routine, and everything was falling into place. That is, until my brother Jacob came to stay with us. A little over a year ago, my mom called me, sounding frazzled as usual. "Sarah, I can't do this anymore. Jacob's been out of control lately, and I need some space. Can he stay with you and Marcus for a while?" It wasn't the first time Jacob had stayed with us, but this was different. My mom and Jacob were always butting heads, and I knew my brother was a handful. He was rebellious, impulsive, and prone to doing things that got him into trouble. But still, he was family, and I didn't want to turn him away. At first, I was hesitant. Marcus and I had just started our family, and I didn't know if we could handle an extra person in the house. But Jacob promised he would be helpful, and I figured it would only be temporary until he went off to college. So I agreed. Looking back now, I regret that decision. For the first year, things were fine. Jacob helped around the house, kept to himself mostly, and he even helped out with Ella when he could. It wasn't perfect, but I was trying to keep the peace, especially for Marcus, who never really understood the tension between me and Jacob. But as the months went by, I started to feel the strain of having him around. There was always this undercurrent of tension, this constant worry that something would set him off. Then came yesterday, the day everything fell apart. It was just me, Jacob, and Ella at home. Marcus was at work, and I had asked Jacob to look after Ella for a few minutes while I went to the bathroom. She was only 2 months old, so I knew Jacob could handle it. I trusted him. I had to trust him. After all, he was family. But when I stepped out of the bathroom, my heart stopped. I walked out to see Jacob at the top of the stairs, holding something wrapped in Ella's blanket. I couldn't process what I was seeing at first. Before I could even blink, Jacob stumbled and my daughter came tumbling down the stairs. Everything went black for a moment. My mind went into overdrive, but all I could think about was my daughter. Was she okay? My legs gave out from under me as I screamed and bolted for the stairs. The world moved in slow motion, and then I reached the bottom. But when I looked down, it wasn't Ella. It was a damn baby doll wrapped in her blanket. My breath caught in my chest. The relief was immediate, but then a wave of fury hit me like a freight train. I looked up to see Jacob, standing there cracking up, laughing, as if he just pulled off some brilliant stunt. "I can't believe that worked," he said, barely able to catch his breath from laughing so hard. My mind was blank for a moment. I couldn't process what was happening. He just laughed? He thought this was funny? I couldn't even finish my sentence. The anger and panic surged through me like a tidal wave. "What the hell is wrong with you, Jacob? That was my daughter. You could have hurt her." I was hysterical, shaking, barely able to get the words out as I screamed at him. "How could you do something so stupid? You don't joke about things like that. You don't mess with my daughter's life." Jacob tried to calm me down, but I couldn't hear him. He kept saying it was just a joke, that Ella was perfectly safe and sound in her room. But I couldn't think about that. All I could see was her falling down the stairs like a rag doll. I couldn't shake the image of that for even a second. "You need to pack your things, Jacob," I said through gritted teeth, "and get out of my house. Now." His face turned pale. He tried to apologize, begged me to calm down, but nothing he said could change how I felt in that moment. Couldn't let it go. I couldn't let him stay here anymore. Not after what he'd done. "Please," Jacob cried, his voice cracking. "I didn't mean it. I just thought it would be funny. I didn't mean to scare you. You don't get it," I screamed, tears filling my eyes. "This isn't just a prank. This could have killed her, Jacob. You don't joke about that. Ever." I grabbed my phone and called my mom, my hands shaking with fury. I told her exactly what happened, and her response was not what I expected. "Sarah, calm down. You're overreacting. It was just a prank. Jacob didn't mean any harm," she said dismissively, her voice cool and collected as if it was no big deal. My blood boiled. I don't care if it was a prank. It was a stupid, dangerous joke. And I'm done, Mom. I'm done with this. Either you come get him or he's out on the street. My mom came to pick Jacob up, but when she left, she called me again. Sarah, you've gone too far. You're being too harsh on him. He's just a dumb teenager who didn't think it through. The anger flared up again. How could she say that? How could she defend him after what he'd done? Even Marcus, when he came home, agreed with my mom. He's a dumb kid, Sarah. He didn't mean any harm. You're being too hard on him. He deserves a second chance. I felt betrayed. My own husband, the father of my child, was taking Jacob's side. I couldn't understand it. I couldn't understand why no one saw what I saw, why no one could see how close my daughter came to being seriously hurt. How could they defend that? That night, as I sat alone in the dark, I started to question myself. Was I overreacting? Was I being too harsh? But in my heart, I knew the truth. It wasn't just a prank. It wasn't harmless fun. It was reckless. It was dangerous. And Jacob needed to learn that lesson the hard way. But now I was left with a choice. Did I really kick him out over a prank? Was I in the wrong? In the days that followed, I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. My little brother, had crossed a line that I could never forget. I didn't care how old he was, how many times he apologized, or how sorry he said he was. I couldn't let him back into my home after that. Not until he learned what was truly at stake. But my mom didn't see it that way. She kept calling me, telling me I was being too harsh, that I should have given Jacob another chance. I didn't know how to explain to her that this wasn't about forgiveness. It was about responsibility. It was about Ella's safety. She couldn't understand that. And Marcus, well, he was on Jacob's side too. He kept saying that he didn't think I should have kicked him out, that it was just a prank. But I couldn't stop thinking about what could have happened. My daughter, my innocent little girl, could have been seriously hurt. And that was something I couldn't just ignore. I didn't sleep much that week. I couldn't stop replaying the scene in my head, my heart racing every time I thought about what could have gone wrong. But then came the phone call that made everything even worse. The phone call came late in the evening. It was Jacob, his voice filled with desperation and regret. I hadn't expected him to reach out to me so soon after everything had happened. But there he was, calling me like he had something important to say. Sarah, he said, his voice quiet but trembling, I've been thinking a lot about everything. And I need to apologize again. I know what I did was stupid. I can't even begin to imagine how you felt when that happened. And I just want to make it right. I didn't say anything at first. I just sat there in the silence, the weight of his words pressing down on me. My heart wavered for a second. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But the memory of seeing Ella's blanket tumble down the stairs, thinking for a split second that it was her, made the anger flare up inside of me all over again. You don't get it, Jacob, I said finally, my voice cold. It wasn't just a prank. You don't mess with someone's child like that. You don't put someone you love in danger for the sake of a laugh. And you didn't even care. You thought it was funny. There was a long pause on the other end. I could almost hear Jacob trying to find the right words. I didn't think it through, he admitted quietly. I wasn't thinking about what could have happened. I just wanted to get a reaction from you. I didn't mean to scare you or hurt Ella. But I get it now. I see how wrong it was. I swear, I never meant to make you feel like that. I felt the walls I had built around my emotions start to crack. Part of me wanted to be angry, wanted to keep him out of my life for what he had done. But another part of me still wanted to believe that he could change, that he could understand just how much I had to protect Ella. Maybe, just maybe, there was a way forward. You scared me, Jacob, I said softly. You scared the hell out of me. That wasn't funny. That was reckless. I know, he whispered. And I'm sorry. I wish I could take it back. But I can't. All I can do is prove to you that I've learned from this. I'll do whatever it takes to show you that I've changed. I didn't respond right away. Part of me was still hesitant, still wondering if this was just another empty apology. Could I really trust him again? Could I give him a second chance after everything that had happened? After a moment of silence, I said, I can't just forget it, Jacob. I can't pretend like everything's okay. I need time to process what happened. And so do you. I understand, he replied quickly. But I'll wait. I'll do whatever it takes. I need you to know that I'm sorry. I hung up the phone, not really knowing how I felt. I wasn't ready to forgive him. I wasn't even sure I could. But I was willing to think about it. I needed time, and I knew it would take time for Jacob to prove that he was truly sorry and that he had learned from his mistake. But as much as I hated to admit it, I knew I didn't want to cut him out of my life forever. He was my brother, and deep down, I knew that if he truly changed, he could still be part of my life. But the question remained, was I willing to risk trusting him again? The next few days were a blur. I kept thinking about Jacob's call, and his apology lingered in the back of my mind. I wanted to move forward, to find peace, but the hurt was still there. The image of Ella's blanket tumbling down the stairs, the fear that gripped me when I thought she was hurt, it stayed with me. It wasn't until a week later that I saw Jacob again. He came over to my house, quietly, cautiously, and asked if we could talk. He hadn't been pushing me. He'd given me space, which I appreciated. When I opened the door, I saw him standing there, holding a small bouquet of flowers in his hands. His face was sincere, but there was still a nervousness in his posture, as if he didn't know how I was going to react. "Sarah," he said softly, his voice full of vulnerability, "I know I messed up, and I know I can't undo what I did, but I want to show you that I've changed. I'll do whatever it takes." I looked at him for a moment, trying to see the young man who had been my brother and not just the kid who had terrified me with that prank. I could see it in his eyes, the remorse, the regret. Maybe it wasn't perfect, but maybe it was enough to start moving forward. "Jacob," I began, my voice softer now, "what you did wasn't just a joke. It was dangerous, and it's going to take time for me to trust you again." "I know," he said quickly, nodding. "I'm not asking you to forgive me right away, but I'm going to show you that I can do better. I can be better." He looked down at the flowers in his hand, then back up at me. "I know it won't make up for what I did, but I wanted to do something for you, to show you I'm serious about making things right." I felt my heart soften just a little. The gesture, simple but sincere, wasn't about trying to erase what had happened. It was about showing me that he was trying to make up for it. And that meant something to me. "Thank you," I said, taking the flowers from his hands. "It's a start." Jacob stood there for a moment, waiting for me to say more. But I wasn't ready to forgive him completely yet. It wasn't a light switch that could just be flipped. Trust had been broken, and that couldn't just be repaired with flowers and words. But the first step had been taken. "I need you to understand that this isn't something that's going to be fixed overnight," I told him. "It'll take time, but I'm willing to try. For Ella, for us." Jacob's face lit up with a mixture of relief and gratitude. "I'll prove it, Sarah. Promise." And as I closed the door behind him, I couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, we were on the path to rebuilding something real. But it wouldn't be easy, and it wouldn't be fast. But for the first time since the prank, I felt like we could move forward. The weeks that followed were filled with ups and downs. Jacob continued to show up, more involved, more responsible, more aware of the weight of what had happened. He spent time with Ella, helping me out more around the house, and even started volunteering at a local community center. It was clear that he was trying to prove that he could be trusted again. I, on the other hand, kept my guard up. Every time he did something nice, something that seemed like he was trying to make amends, part of me felt relieved. But another part of me couldn't forget what had happened. I couldn't shake the fear that it would all come crashing down again. But slowly, over time, the tension began to ease. Jacob's actions began to speak louder than his words. He was proving himself bit by bit. And while I still wasn't ready to completely let go of the past, I could see that he had learned from his mistake. And one day, months later, as we sat together at the kitchen table, Ella asleep in her crib, I looked at Jacob and realized something. I had seen the change in him, not just in his actions, but in his maturity. He had grown. He had become someone I could trust again. "I'm proud of you, Jacob," I said softly. "You've come a long way." He smiled, a genuine, grateful smile. "Thanks, Sarah. I've been trying." And for the first time in months, I felt a sense of peace. We were all healing, slowly but surely. As the weeks passed, I thought that maybe, just maybe, things could go back to normal. Jacob was proving himself, trying hard to show that he understood the gravity of what he'd done. I kept my guard up, but I was willing to let the healing process unfold. The road to forgiveness wasn't easy, and it certainly wasn't fast, but we were moving in the right direction. However, I knew the real test would come when something big happened again. Was I ready to let go of my fear? Was I ready to let Jacob back into my life fully? I didn't know. One afternoon, a few months after Jacob's return, I got the call that would make me question everything. It was a typical day, quiet, and Marcus was at work. Ella had just finished her nap, and I was sitting with her in my arms, trying to catch up on some housework. The phone rang, breaking the silence, and I picked it up without thinking. Hello. It was Jacob's voice, and the moment I heard it, something in my gut tightened. Sarah, I need to talk to you. Something happened. My heart dropped. I could hear the panic in his voice, the same nervous energy that had plagued him before, and I braced myself for what was coming next. What happened? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm, though my heart was racing. I made a mistake. A big one. His voice cracked, and I could hear the regret in every word. I messed up, and I'm scared you're going to hate me again. My breath caught in my throat. Jacob, what did you do? Please just come to the park. I'll explain everything, I swear. I didn't mean for this to happen, he pleaded, his voice desperate. I didn't even think twice. I grabbed Ella's diaper bag, rushed out the door, and headed to the park. My mind was racing. What could Jacob have done now? Had he really learned from the prank? Had he done something again to hurt my trust in him? Was it possible he was back to his old ways? When I arrived at the park, I saw Jacob sitting on the bench, his head down, his hands gripping his knees tightly. He didn't look like the confident, mischievous teenager I had once known. He looked broken. Jacob, I said softly as I approached, but he didn't look up at first. He just stayed still, as if he were bracing himself for the worst. Sarah, I screwed up, he said finally, lifting his head. His eyes were red from crying, his face full of regret. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need you to know that I didn't mean to hurt anyone again. This time, it's different. I sat down beside him, trying to steady my breathing. What happened, Jacob? What did you do? He paused for a long time before speaking. I was with my friends at the park. We were messing around and I thought it would be funny to prank them. He broke off, tears spilling down his cheeks. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I told them I could do a dangerous stunt, something crazy, just to get a laugh. And I did it. But I almost hurt myself. I fell and they had to help me up. I could have been seriously injured. I felt a wave of relief flood through me, but it didn't last long. Jacob, you're scaring me. That's not just a prank. That's reckless. You can't keep doing things like that. You've got to take responsibility for your actions. I know, he whispered. I know. But this time I realized it. I'm not the same person I was. I'm trying to change, Sarah. I've been working on myself. I'm not the same reckless teenager I was before. The vulnerability in his voice struck me hard. It wasn't just that he was apologizing again. It was the way he had admitted his mistake. The way he was taking responsibility. He was growing. Maybe not in a perfect, linear way, but he was taking steps forward. The realization hit me like a wave. I had to trust him again, at least a little. If he was truly trying to change, then I had to believe in that change. I had to give him the chance to show me. I'm scared to trust you again, Jacob, I said, my voice shaky with emotion. But I see that you're trying. You're not perfect, but no one is. If you keep proving that you're learning from your mistakes, we can work through this. But you've got to stop making reckless decisions. You can't keep doing this. I promise, Sarah, he said, his voice filled with sincerity. I won't mess up again. I can't. I won't let you down. As I looked at him, I realized that forgiving him wasn't about forgetting what happened. It wasn't about pretending that everything was fine. It was about giving him the opportunity to prove that he could grow, to prove that he could make better decisions. And maybe that was all I could ask for. I believe you, I said, my voice trembling. But this is your last chance, Jacob. I'm giving you this one shot to make things right. Jacob nodded, his eyes filled with gratitude. Thank you, Sarah. I won't let you down. After that day, Jacob made a conscious effort to prove that he was serious about his growth. He stayed focused on his responsibilities and became more involved in family activities. Marcus noticed the change too. There was a sense of respect in the air that hadn't been there before, a quieter, more thoughtful version of Jacob. It wasn't perfect. There were moments when I still worried, moments when I questioned whether or not he had truly changed. But slowly, the tension between us faded. The bond that had been broken was mended, piece by piece, as Jacob continued to show that he was learning from his mistakes. One evening, several months later, Jacob sat down with me on the porch while Marcus was inside putting Ella to bed. "I'm grateful for this second chance, Sarah," Jacob said, his voice steady. "You didn't have to forgive me. I know I messed up, but you've taught me that family is about accountability, about making things right no matter how hard it is." I smiled softly, feeling the weight of those words. "I didn't forgive you for me, Jacob. I did it for Ella, for our family. But you have to understand that trust is earned. It doesn't happen overnight." "I know," he replied quietly, "and I'm working every day to earn it." And in that moment, I realized that I was finally starting to see the brother I had always hoped for. A brother who wasn't just reckless, but someone who understood the responsibility of being a part of this family. As time passed, we healed. Not just Jacob and me, but the whole family. We weren't perfect, but we were trying. And that's what mattered. We had learned that trust, once broken, could be rebuilt. That forgiveness was possible when it was earned. And above all, that family was worth fighting for.